Well, welcome to the August 2025 edition of the McKinney Amateur Radio Club General Meeting. Glad you are all here. Check-in code for tonight is Lima 4, Lima 4. So if you have the email from Ham Club Online, please check in. If you do not have the email, or if you're a guest, there is a pad over here by Lance. Please sign in. That's our sign-in sheet. Okay, and don't forget, we've got 50-50 drawing tickets up here. Jerry is happy to take your money. And we also have door prize tickets. If you are a McKinney Amateur Radio Club member and you do not have a blue ticket, come and see her at the break, if you would. I am pushing the button. There we go. Okay, again, check-in code is Lima 4. Okay, right. Please join us for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, thank you. All right, so I know we have a few guests tonight. Do we have any brand new licensees? Any new licensees in the house? No? Okay. No? Do we have one? Did I miss somebody? Start of last month. Awesome. Congratulations. By the way, he showed me his name tag. That's the coolest thing that I've seen as far as a name tag goes. So at the break, go harass him. You press it, and it plays your call sign in Morse. Okay, just want to shout out, my wife and I just got back from Ohio visiting my dad. It was a great visit. Just so happened we got there Thursday, and it so happened that the Fairfield County and Lancaster, or the Lancaster and Fairfield County Amateur Radio Club General Meeting was on Thursday night. So we made an appearance, great group of people, exchanged some ideas. I know we have at least one member that's on Zoom, Walt, I believe, Whiskey 8, Alpha Lima Tango, I think. So welcome aboard, Walt. Glad you're here. And just want to give a shout out. Great club. They're looking to grow like we are. We are growing. I think we're busting at the seams now, and that's a good thing to have.
Okay, so I'm the lucky guy who's been appointed the chief scrounger and procurer for a lot of our projects, and there are some things I'm having some problems finding. So I want to throw this out here and see if anybody knows anybody or anything that we might be able to get a hold of an Anderson DB 224E as in Echo antenna. And we're looking for probably 700 feet of 7/8" heliax. Those are the two things I'm having problems finding. I've been doing really good on everything else. So if anybody knows or thinks they know somebody, try to put me in contact with them. Thank you. Andrew. Did I say Anderson? Sorry. Andrew, excuse me. Get confused between power poles.
Okay, Felicia the Fox. Wow, we had 9 fox hunters in July. I know we had one brand new fox hunter. Pat, are you here? Pat? No? Okay. All right, so what do we have giveaways for the fox hunters?
Free movie pass to some MARC or a $20 gift card to Olive Garden.
All right, so we have names on here?
5 names on there.
Okay. Sid, I'm going to let you draw. Kevin?
Olive Garden or movie card?
Olive Garden, all right. What's your number? Okay, Ron, will you draw the next one? Chris Kirby. Chris, you here? Yeah, you're here tonight. Same table. There's something wrong with that. Well, congrats, guys. Oh, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. So just for the group on Zoom, Jerry has done a phenomenal job at going out and getting all of these donations, these gift cards. I mean, it's absolutely awesome. Thank you, Jerry. Okay, so when you hunt Felicia, you have the opportunity to leave a comment. And I'm going to guess that Lance hid Felicia this time. Maybe. So Martin said hiding her near poison ivy was either genius or sadistic. Oh. Am I itching to find her? I'm not even going to go there. All right. Ooh, what was that? That wasn't me. Okay, all right, so Potluck Poda. Man, we had a great turnout at Potluck Poda, and we were probably missing some of the regular members too. So we had about 40, I believe, at Potluck Poda. And just want to share a few pictures. Of course, you know that gentleman right there. And Joe is here. Joe is from the Sherman Club. Joe? Okay, and y'all. So y'all remember I put in the invite. Please wear your name badges, if you could. So David took it seriously. So thank you, David, if you're watching. All right, we have some good stuff coming up. Bob DeVance is hosting another series. This is Electronics 101 Part 3. And this will be, and you can take a picture of this if you want to. It's also on Discord. Saturday, August 30th, 9 a.m. to 12 p.m. Awesome, absolutely awesome class. Thank you, Bob, for doing those. I went to the last one, and it's great. So let's fill up the fire station if we can. We had 24 people at the last one. Yeah, I intend to be at this one too. This, yeah. The last one was on our HTs and just a wealth of information. It was great. Let's see. There was something. Oh, I think, and I don't want to let the cat out of the bag just yet, but I think Tim is working on a nano VNA class, maybe. Working on it. So. Fourth quarter or first quarter next year, nano VNA. How many of you have a nano VNA? How many of you really know all the features behind it? That's what I thought. Yeah, I look forward to that too, Tim. Teasing. Okay. All right, Oktoberfest is coming up. So, Sid, do you want to say a few words about Oktoberfest?
Yeah, just real quick, something else to keep on your calendars for next month. It's going to be a busy month, too. For the, correct me if I'm wrong, Brother Pekarski, but it's our 12th year or 13th to be invited back, something like that, to the Oktoberfest Main Street McKinney. We provide communications between downtown. We'll have a booth there and the remote parking lot. Just keeping an eye on the parking lot. So we'll need volunteers for that. Again, something else, please keep on your calendar. Should be a little bit cooler, hopefully, by that time of the year, but we'll see. So, and we'll have more information on sign up and things like that next month, but just something to keep in mind. Thanks.
All right, thank you, Sid, for managing all of that. And yeah, Oktoberfest, I worked it a little bit last year. It's a great event. Get a lot of interesting people at Oktoberfest. Sometimes the later in the day, the more interesting they are. If you know what I mean. Around 10 o'clock, and you inevitably get the people asking if we can talk to aliens. So the answer is yes. Present our presenter, Andrew Koenig. Hey, I got it right. Awesome. Andrew, it's all you.
All right, good evening, guys. Stand on that. Oh, you're going to kill me here. My computer is all wired in over here. Sorry about that. Can your camera make it this far? Yeah, high dollar camera, right? So anyway, my name's Andrew Koenig, and the talk I'm going to be giving tonight, kind of two parts. This PowerPoint here, I actually gave this at a ballooning conference in Kansas actually 2 months ago, back in June. So this part is a really technical dive, and then I'm also going to flip over to some photos and some other balloon things the Richardson Club has done here in the past 6 months. So real quick, I'll introduce myself. Andrew Koenig, KE5GDB. I was licensed in 2005 in Houston. I was part of a group called the Hamsters, and middle school group, and the guy that taught our class, our Elmer, actually trained a lot of astronauts and helped them get their licenses. I grew up like 2 miles from the Johnson Space Center, Ellington Field, 2 miles that way, Johnson Space Center, 2 miles that way, and all said and done, that was great. That was a lot of fun to grow up in that area around all those people, all those astronauts kids. The astronauts kids really sucked when it came to high school class ranking. But otherwise, I learned a lot and got to do a lot of cool things. Nowadays, I live in Richardson. I moved up here to go to UT Dallas in 2012. Did finish with a software engineering degree. I saw the whoosh, yeah. Yep. Got a software engineering degree. I started telecom engineering, but boom, bust, and then they canceled the program. And the quickest way to get out with an engineering degree was to just go software. So I did finish school, software engineering degree, and I now work for Airbus Defense and Space, doing all sorts of embedded systems development for SATCOM ground terminals. And a lot of the stuff I do for work is applicable here, and a lot of the stuff I do here is applicable for work. So it's nice. I really enjoy that. Regarding ballooning, I've participated with a number of groups over the years. The South Texas Balloon Launch Team, BLT, they have launched hundreds of things in the past 30 years. And circa 2007, I got involved with them, and I would drive down there for a lot of their launches after I moved up here. The Plano Amateur Radio Club, a lot of y'all know Tony, W5ADC, and Kip, AE5IB. They were doing a lot of launches circa 2010 through 2018. Ultimately, they claim to be retired. I still drag them out to our launches, but I've kind of taken the reins from what they did. And nowadays, we launch as the Richardson Wireless Club. It's really the same group of people that was launching with Plano, but I live in Richardson, so we call it the Richardson Area Balloonatics. And I have launched with other groups over the years, Arbonet, and a few others. I forget their names off the top of my head. But real quick, a lot of this talk is going to be centered around the Project Horus ecosystem. And the group that puts this together is actually based in Australia, Adelaide, Australia. They're the Amateur Radio Experimenters Group, and they do some really cool stuff. Mark, VK5QI, and Michaela, VK3FUR. The two of them are kind of the lead software developers for a lot of the stuff I'll talk about. So I did want to throw this slide in there just for that purpose. But let me QSY real quick to some of the pictures, and hang on here. The meeting controls are in the way of what I'm trying to do. So the first thing I want to show y'all here, this is RAB1, okay? This footage here was recorded from a 360-degree camera mounted in the center of this ring that had some toys around it. And you can see the astronaut here may have had a Columbia level incident. The frame rate through Zoom's a little lackluster, but the astronaut gets hit by a payload. Doug, raise your hand real quick. It's Doug's payload that hit the astronaut, and anyway, the astronaut didn't make it back down in one piece, but it was good video. Again, there's a little delay here on the Zoom video, but this next picture that's coming up sometime today, this was the ring. Man, it's like many seconds of delay. It's quite impressive. Yeah. So I'm on my own hotspot. Should I go to the house Wi-Fi, or is it all terrible? Hey, okay. So anyway, this here is the Insta360 1R camera in the middle of a 3D printed ring. These toys are Tony's grandkids' favorite toys. So he was like, let's fly these. So we did, and the video came out really well. Actually, I'm gonna skip that one. Here you can see another view from another camera of the astronaut getting whacked by a payload. There's the debris right there. That's Lego astronaut just not making the trip. This last little clip from the 360 camera is of the balloon bursting. Now, that's talcum powder right there in the balloon, right? And there's a giraffe. But that's the latex balloon bursting. There's the astronaut again. And anyway, on my laptop, trust me, the video looks a lot better. It's actually running 30 frames a second, I promise. But this is the type of post-burst chaos you see. So the stack up is you've got a latex balloon at the very top. This balloon weighs anywhere from like 600 grams to the largest we've flown has been 3,000 grams of latex, right? That's a lot of, it's a 6-pound balloon, right? It's a lot of latex. So balloon, about 10 feet of string, and then we hit the parachute. And then under the parachute is another several feet of string, and then whatever radios we decide to fly. It's mostly RF and camera centric, but we have had some other interesting things fly before. A new rule recently established due to a $500 camera somewhere in the fields of Kansas is the stack up always needs to be tracker, a bunch of payloads, and then another tracker, right? That's critical. You have to sandwich everything between two GPSs. The camera that's out in the field somewhere in Kansas is just like this. This is the Insta360 X5, $550 from Best Buy, and the stack up on that flight was balloon, parachute, camera, then 2 trackers, and then another camera. And I wanted to have this up close to the balloon to replicate this video right here. That turned out to be a bad idea. I should have put the tracker above the other one of these. So I sold some radios and I bought another one. So this is a still here. That's a still of the first frame after burst. And I love that. And you can see right along a line right there, that's where the 2 sides of the camera, there's a lens on the front, lens on the back, and it stitches them together in software. So that's where it stitches it, but you still get a great view of that burst. When you actually kind of zoom out doing the 360 magic, this is the whole horizon and that balloon bursting. So you can see how large it is just relative to everything else. I mean, it's probably 30 or 40 feet in diameter at this point. And this for the record is 110,000 feet. This is like 110, 111,315 feet. That was a great launch. Anything above 90 is gravy, and it hit 90, and we're like, it's going to burst any second now. Went on for another 25 minutes. We're just sitting there just like, when is it going to go? Is it just not going to stop? We're going to have to call NASA? But no, it eventually did burst. This ring that you can see right here, that's about 18 inches in diameter. And that's under the parachute. So the balloon is even, another 10 or 15 feet above that. So it gives you some perspective as to just how large that balloon is right before burst. So the actual launch, I've got a handful of photos here. This was taken from this payload right here. This is a Raspberry Pi with a camera on it, downlinking images in real time. And so let me Let me see if I can find some of the better ones towards the end of the album. We saw good pictures of the balloon, but let's find some pictures just before burst. Here we go. So that is the curvature of the Earth right there, taken from this camera. Flat earthers tend to stop paying attention to my talk at about this point, but that is legitimate. That's not just a lens effect, that's real. So this is kind of what I'm going for right here. I love this. I love capturing that over and over again. There's all sorts of RF experiments that are fun too, but for the camera side of the house, this is the best part. Let's see here. Quick question. Do we take temperature readings? Yes. And let me come back to that. So I'm gonna QSY back to the slides now that we've had some cool photos there. Where's the slideshow from current slide? So from a technical perspective, this is kind of what the Project Horus ecosystem offers us. 21st century ballooning. On the payload side, we've got Horus binary, which is a 100 baud 4 FSK, very, very slow, but very, very resilient against noise protocol that helps us downlink 32 bytes of telemetry every 3.5 seconds. Right, so after all the forward error correction, after everything that gets encoded in there, 32 bytes every 3.5 seconds. WeNet is the digital protocol we run for the camera. That's high speed. That's 115.2 kilobaud, right? So serial, effectively. It is serial. It's a radio connected to the serial port on a Raspberry Pi. And when the serial port goes high, the frequency shifts high. When the serial port goes low, frequency shifts low. So it's bit banging FSK out from the Raspberry Pi, right? It's really kind of sketchy, but it works very well. In terms of reception, this is what we're working with. We've got WebHorus, which is a utility to receive this just in a web browser. Horus GUI, that's an application, and Horus DMod library, which runs on a Raspberry Pi, command line Linux-based. And then on WeNet, you've just got a basic WeNet application that runs on a Pi to receive that. This is done with an RTL SDR. Really quick, how many of y'all know what an RTL SDR is? Do y'all have one? Okay. And then finally, for display, most everything we do is rendered on SoundHub Amateur. For local display, this is a website, by the way, and I'll show you that here in a second. For local display, we've got Chase Mapper, and this is like SoundHub, but it runs on a Pi in your car. So when you're out in the boonies chasing these things, you don't need internet to actually receive them and display them on a mapping interface. And then the WeNet stuff is displayed on this website. And that's, let me see here. Over here, look at that, that's a chair right here in front of us. And this is actually on the World Wide Web, and these images scroll in real time as this takes a photo. So anyway, in a minute or two, it'll refresh with the chair moved. It's not instant. It does take about a minute for everything to propagate. So let's see here. Got through that. So what exactly is Horus binary? We'll wait for this to catch up. I'm back on the PowerPoint already, so we'll get there. But while it's loading, while Zoom is figuring out the video compression there, Horus binary, as I said, 100 baud, 4 FSK, 32 byte payload. It transmits latitude, longitude, date time, altitude, speed, number of GPS satellites. That's really good. Anything less than 5, and you can't really trust the data. Temperature, voltage, and then you also get 9 bytes of whatever you want to send down. And that's where your temperature, pressure, humidity, whatever you can pack into 9 bytes of data comes in. So again, the chair. Yes, Brady.
I'd like to mention our package that was a symbol 1. I was looking at the temperature, and it starts dropping and dropping and dropping, and then going up considerably, and then getting cold again.
Okay.
Turns out there's an area, I don't know, 40, 50,000 feet.
There's a thermocline. Thermocline. Yep.
Crazy things come out of this.
And anyway, yes, we're back to the PowerPoint, hooray. Yes, so what Brady was talking about, as the balloons go up, you see this temperature drop significantly, but then somewhere around 55, 60,000 feet, the temperature goes up. And it's the weirdest thing, but it is a thermocline, and I've seen that in scuba diving, right? I'm used to dropping down to a point and things all of a sudden get warmer, but it's observed in the upper atmosphere as well. So anyway, these are the technical details of Horus binary. I don't fly APRS. I fly this in lieu of APRS because it's so immune to noise, right? Anything that runs upper sideband can receive this, and it just is so much better than APRS. We do bring our own ground infrastructure for that. The next bullet point that's loading, just thinking about it here, does say that there's about a 20 dB noise advantage over 1200 baud APRS, right? So that's the difference between what, 1 milliwatt and what would that be? Almost a watt, right? That's, no, sorry, 1 milliwatt to 100 milliwatts. That's 20 dB. So that's quite an improvement. But I'm going to move on to the next slide because I think this video here is causing a problem. This one is compressing and slowing us down. So to fly that Horus binary protocol, we pick these up. These are radio sondes launched by the National Weather Service out of Fort Worth twice a day. So I'm going to pass this around. Try not to touch the end of that little sensor stalk there because I might reuse it. The string is okay. It's the silver part. There's some sensitive bits on the end of that. But the Weather Service uses these to generate, man, that's really behind, isn't it? They use these to generate a lot of their forecasts. They feed the models with data that's collected from these radio sondes. And fundamentally, it's just a little PCB, right? It's got that sensor stalk that's poking out of the case. There's a GPS on here, and you can derive wind vector data from the GPS. It's got a temperature sensor on the very end of the sensor stalk, and then it's got a humidity sensor midway up the sensor stalk. You'll see a little surface mount part that kind of forms a bridge there, and that's the humidity sensor. So this is the bare PCB. I did take the battery case off of this. There's a little battery holder, but I'll pass that around too. These run in the 400 megahertz band, not 430, 440, that's 400 to 406 megahertz. And so a bunch of enthusiasts like me run around, pick these up, we build receivers. In fact, I've got a receiver up on Gwynn Hall in Denton. Y'all probably know the 14692 repeater. Well, like 4, 8, 10 yards over is another antenna tuned to that frequency to pick these up so we can get really good packets all the way to the ground. So we can go and find them in a field or wherever and collect them and launch them again for ham radio purposes. So anyway, the one passing around is a Vaisala RS-41. That's what we launch here. Shreveport launches another model. This is a GRAW DFM-17. And anyway, I'll pass that around too. But just cool bits coming from the edge of space. And the best part is these have STM32 microprocessors in them. So that's something very expansible, very hackable by people in our community. And people far smarter than I have written new firmware to run on these and run these ham-oriented protocols. We blow away the Vaisala stock firmware and run our own. So how do you actually fly with this Horus binary protocol? Well, step one is to obtain the radio sonde. And we just covered that a little bit. Sondhub.org is where all this data is collected and mapped, and then you have to actually drive out and pick it up. And every couple months, I'll spend a whole Friday just mapping out, I want to hit all these different landing sites, knocking on doors, asking people if I can go search, in the back 40 of their ranch or whatever, and pick these up. There's usually an orange parachute, as we saw on the last slide here. I forgot, it's going to take a while. But orange parachute makes it easy to find, and pick it up, reflash it, and carry on. The next step, obtain a Horus ID. This is very similar to DMR. Your call sign is associated with an ID, and so Horus ID is needed. Flash the firmware. This is using the RS-41 NG firmware and an ST-Link. That's just a standard programmer. And then launch it. At the end of the day, that tracker that's passing around weighs 90 grams. That's next to nothing. I mean, old APRS trackers, fully decked out, could weigh 2-3 pounds, right? But 90 grams is almost nothing. So we love to fly with those. Receiving it is pretty straightforward. Let me grab this HT here. So are y'all familiar with the Quansheng UV K5 and some of the hacking you can do on this? So this radio, it's like 20, 30 bucks on Amazon, and you can load alternate firmware on it. And this firmware can receive sideband. So let me see if I can get this working here. Oops. So that's the data, right? That's all it takes. You can acoustically couple it into a microphone, and you can receive it using these utilities. So let's see. This is actually receiving it through a little SDR here on the table, and the radio sound is placed outside where it can get GPS reception. But this is real time. You know, it's running the RWK call sign. We've got external temperature, humidity, pressure, right? All the environmental data. But this is it. And you can do it with an SDR, but you can also just take something this simple and feed it into a microphone on your computer, and it decodes it.
So when you reflash that software, does it use the radio that's already on the SoundHub device, and you're shifting its frequency from
Correct.
400 to 432?
Correct. So the question was,
The ISM 432 that we can use all the time.
yes. So we're using the radio hardware already on the Sond, reprogramming it and moving it into the ham band. It's a Silicon Labs SI something or other. You know, a lot of people do whisper beacons with the same radio. So we're leveraging, or a similar radio, but we're leveraging all that to just move it into the ham band. But anyway, there's also a web GUI that can decode this. Horace.sondhub.org, and maybe it'll pivot here in a second. But you can seriously just take your radio like this, hold it up to your microphone, and go to this website, horace.sondhub.org, and it will decode this data and send it along and upload it for us to consume. This internet is something special, isn't it? This is, I'm actually, this has never been this bad. I'm on my hotspot, but I don't. Yeah. Yep. So anyway, yes, Web Horace here. This is what it looks like, and just your audio feeding into this will start decoding packets just like APRS, but much better in my opinion. So anyway, on to the next side. Let's talk about SoundHub Amateur, and this is, again, it's on my screen, and I'm just waiting for it to finish here. SoundHub Amateur is very similar to APRS.fi, but it's a place for balloon payloads to be aggregated and displayed on a single screen. Where it shines over APRS.fi is that it has a robust telemetry display. There's all sorts of graphs and other things that get plotted, and plotted very well in SoundHub Amateur, that don't show up on APRS.fi. So you can see we've got battery voltage, ascent rate, GPS satellites, temperature, modulation, all this stuff is displayed on here without any issue. And this just makes it far superior to APRS.fi. There's also something called chase car support, and this is wonderful. So you can enable chase mode on your phone, and it will plot your position on the map so I can see who all is swarming around the payloads. And so assuming we all have internet, we can actually pass that data in real time, and it shows up on our respective maps. And if you throw the shub in APRS, it'll also just take your APRS packets, your FTM 400, whatever, D710 that's running APRS, and plot it on here as well. Robust telemetry display, we talked about that. This is critical. Real-time landing predictions, okay? Using the GFS model, the data collected by that radio sonde when it was launched the first time, there are wind vectors that are published, right? And so SoundHub ingests that data every 6 hours, and when the balloon is going up, it will say, okay, well, if it bursts here, here's where we think it'll land. And then if it bursts at 33 kilometers or 100,000 feet, target burst altitude, here's where we think it'll land then. So the real-time landing predictions are awesome, and that updates like once a minute. It's wonderful to just have that data. And so we'll often drive 10, 15, 20 miles ahead of the balloon, right, based on the predicted landing site. And we've had to backtrack any number of times, but that's by design. So it will also ingest APRS packets. If we ever fly a standard APRS balloon, it will ingest packets from that as long as it has the balloon icon. So I would show you all this example, but I don't want to spend 5 minutes waiting for it to load. So anyway, Chase Mapper, the next thing that's going to come up, there we go. Chase Mapper is very similar, but this is locally hosted on a Raspberry Pi. So this little orange or yellow box that I've got sitting by the exit is running a Pi with the receiver, running all this software. And like I said, I would show y'all, but it's going to take a little while to QSY over there. But on your way out or up or whatever, check out that box. It's also designed to control satellite antennas to stay pointed at this balloon as it flies. So using an internal GPS in the box and then the GPS data coming out of the radio sondes, this stays pointed and allows us to receive telemetry very well. These are some technical details. I'm not going to go too deep into this, but it does have the dual predictions, and that's what you can see right here. This is where the balloon currently is. If it bursts now, you follow the red trace. If it bursts at the target altitude, you follow the blue trace. But at the end of the day, you should be driving there, right? Is it a race or a competition to find it first? Absolutely. Yes. Yeah. No, not finders keepers. I fly too much money for that. Let's see. I'm going to skip this next slide, and we're going to go straight to WeNet. So WeNet here, and the video is actually looking pretty good right now. You can see this is wideband, right? This is 431.3, and this is 431.7 right there. So that's pretty wideband, almost 400 kilohertz, 500 kilohertz wide. But that's running that 115.2 kilobaud protocol I was talking about earlier. It collects the images from the Pi camera. It resizes them, it adds overlays, and then it compresses them. We add a little RWK logo in the bottom right corner, and it adds text at the top that gives us the latitude, longitude, and altitude, and other telemetry data as available. And then it transmits it via this link. And it uses a LoRa radio, but it does not use the LoRa protocol. This is just raw FSK, right? We could use LoRa, but I have mixed emotions about the closed source nature of it. And the guys that wrote most of this software don't like it. So we just fly what the ecosystem already supports. So anyway, this is WeNet in a nutshell. So building a transmitter, what does that look like? This is from MARC in Australia. He's got a little GPS. He's got a Pi 0W under there. That's a LoRa hat. And then on the outside of the box, there's a camera. And we've learned the hard way that you need to shield the ribbon cable going to the camera because it will desense your GPS. You will lose GPS lock. It is a problem. So he did wrap foil tape around that. Now, the payload that's sitting up here taking pictures of us all right now is this guy. Camera on the front, shielded cable. I think this is a Pi 3 in here. We've got the LoRa radio hat. We've got the GPS antenna on the top. And then for added flavor, we threw in the SSTV radio here, which is the Quansheng UVK5, my favorite thing. But I stripped it out of the case to save weight and make it fit inside my little box. Now, to get this to work at altitude, we've got to keep it warm. So for $1.50 at the hardware store, yeah, and it's like, what, 20 grams? I mean, how can you argue with that? So I'm going to unplug this and pass this around as well. Now, be gentle. This is a flight model, and I intend to fly it again, and next week even, yes. And it has had some rough landings. You'll see the base is cracked, but that base there is something I designed in Onshape, an online 3D CAD program, and 3D printed it just at home, right? So I modeled the faucet cover, and then I 3D printed that, and then sent it to the edge of space a few times. So I cover it with the faucet cover.
The controls and the antenna stick through the bottom, so.
Yep. Yeah, so you can turn the slow scan radio off and on with the little volume knob hanging through the bottom. The knob and the SMA connector are also mechanically significant. That's actually what holds the radio in it. It constrains it, yeah. So anyway, if you want to build a receiver to receive this digital data, a Pi 3 or newer, you'll need an RTL SDR and preferably a preamp. You can see here, this is the full satellite rig. That's a camera tripod, a Yaesu G5400, and then a big UHF satellite antenna. That's the recommended path. You don't have to go that far to receive the digital images in real time, but that will get you good results all the time. Yeah, Neat antenna gain, as I mentioned. You can install a Docker image. Some of y'all may be familiar with Docker, but install a WeNet Docker image and it just runs. It just talks to the SDR. And then it will automatically upload all of your images to ssdv.habhub.org. Now, the coolest thing with this, so say every one of us in the room is running a receiver, but every one of us receives a different packet from the camera, a different block of the image. ssdv.habhub.org will reassemble that into a full image, right? It's a voting network, so to speak, and it just works so well. You can't argue with the success of it. And where that matters is the payload string swings. You get this pendulum effect. It just happens. Unless you design something that looks like a model rocket, you're going to have some swing there. So the antenna, the quarter wave, has a pattern that looks like a donut, around it. But as it swings one way or the other, you might wander into the null of the antenna. But if you've got geographically diverse receivers, if I've got one in Richardson, another one in Denton, another one here, we will likely all be able to receive it throughout the whole pendulum cycle. So anyway, cool stuff. There is also a method to receive this using a web receiver. This is brand new. You can actually, using Chrome, connect your RTL SDR to Chrome and decode in a web browser. So new, testing well, but not exactly ready for prime time. So additional things that WeNet can achieve here. So it uploads GPS data once a second, and having once a second GPS data is the best thing ever. We've also got this telemetry aggregation thing. So I'm going to pass this around next. So if we've got a bunch of small, say, like student payloads that all use like a Pi Pico W, they can broadcast telemetry data through Bluetooth. We can receive it on the WeNet payload using just the Bluetooth radio that's on the Raspberry Pi, and then downlink it through our 115.2 kilobaud link, right? So it's much easier to show you how to run 30 lines of Python to broadcast telemetry data off of this than it is for you to actually do the whole data link back to ground yourself. So WeNet allows us to run any number of sensors, aggregate it on one, and then downlink it as one. So we saw this image a little while ago. This was the last image before burst on that first launch, and it's perfect except for one thing. There's a row of missing packets right here. You can just see this little bar right here. What that was Doug's payload taking out another payload when it whacked the antenna, and it actually severed the solder joint between the SMA connector and the trace on the PCB on that board that's floating around the room. So yeah, it was pretty violent. We learned some things on our payload stack up on that flight. We've since fixed a lot. So anyway, what is a Horus-centric launch configuration? Like, what does this all look like when it's all said and done? Well, our trackers are RS-41s. Usually you've got a primary and a backup, a top and a bottom, right? We've got a camera running WeNet with a Pi Camera 3. And then on the ground side, you've got a receiver running, a Pi 4 or 5, an RTL SDR, some form of multi-slice receiver. And I've got a slide on that, but we won't go deep into it. And then as much antenna as possible. On the truck driving around, it's just a quarter wave mag mount. The quarter wave gives you the best pattern looking up, right, for what I can run on a mag mount. Ground stations, satellite stations work best. The more Yagi, the better. Chase Mapper is good for local reception, and then watching things online, SONDHub Amateur, and ssdv.habhub.org. So quick, really technical side note. If y'all are familiar with Docker, I've figured out how to run any number of receivers. We've got like 15 receivers running right here off of one single SDR at a time. This uses a protocol called KA9Q radio that takes the data in, does some multi-slice magic using FFTs, and then spits it out to all these different receivers. So one RTL SDR with a Pi 4 or 5, and you can receive everything that we're running on this flight string. And it works really well. So applied, what does this look like? Well, this is a quarter wave ground plane antenna mounted to the roof of a car. This is Tony, W580C's setup. He's got a preamp in this box, and then a Pi and a battery in this box. This is what the Pi and battery look like. A charging circuit for the battery. This is just a standard lithium-ion USB battery pack, a Raspberry Pi right there, RTL SDR, and then a GPS module so he shows up on our maps as we're all chasing. How big is that? The whole thing is probably about half the size of this table. The electronics, though, are like small. They'd fit in a faucet cover, but he spread it out so he could easily strap it to his cargo rack. Yeah. So anyway, another thing I want to tell you all about, how do we figure out how to inflate the balloon? We use this burst calculator. So we define our payload mass in grams, we select which balloon we're running, and then we define a target ascent rate. The 5 meters a second you see there is equivalent to about 1,000 feet per minute, and that's good. We like that. It's not too short, but it's not too long, right? You underinflate the balloon, and it'll go to Louisiana, or it'll go to Oklahoma, or whatever. You're gonna be chasing all day long. You overinflate the balloon, and you won't maximize what the balloon itself can achieve. It'll burst prematurely, and you might shave off 10, 20, 30,000 feet if you really overdo it. So 5 meters a second is the right balance between, undershooting and overshooting that. The real valuable output here is this. How many cubic feet of hydrogen we need to inflate this. We've also got a target neck lift. So with this and a scale, and with the target cubic feet, we can know what the pressure gauge on the hydrogen tank should show when we finish inflating, and we can also know what the scale, when zeroed out with like 20 pounds of weight on it, should show with that free lift. So, quick side note, I've still got plenty to talk about, but this slide was just convenient to put here. We are launching in 2 weeks, or a week and a half, August 23rd. This is gonna be in somewhere Aubrey, Salina-ish. We haven't fully picked a launch site yet because the winds aloft are still changing. We don't know how far west this is gonna pull. So if it's not gonna be too far west, we'll launch out of Aubrey. If it's gonna go pretty far west, we'll do Salina. 8 a.m. setup, 9 a.m. release. We'll be flying a crossband repeater. We'll have slow scan TV running on it with the payload that's being passed around. Horus binary with the RS-41s that y'all have seen. Other payloads include a 360 camera. It's going to be this guy right here. Some environmental sensors. That Pi Pico W that's floating around will also be flying. And maybe a Geiger counter. We might do that just for fun. But tracking here on amateur.sondhub.org and more info at k5rdbk.org/balloons. So anyway, I'm going to flip over to the browser and show y'all some more cool pictures. Wow, it's actually updating quite nicely right now. So this is kind of an up-close view of the satellite station when we've got it all set up and running. So this is a Yaesu G5400, as I mentioned. We've got that high-gain UHF antenna. I've got a preamp hanging on the back here, and it's just a standard Nuelec $20, $30 preamp from Amazon, but I 3D printed an enclosure for that, so it's got some amount of environmental resilience. The yellow box runs off of AC, so I've got a little Westinghouse, 300 watt hour, Jackery or EcoFlow type box, very similar to the one that I'm running my laptop on right now. I've also got a battery because I forgot to charge the Westinghouse that day. You know how it goes. And so anyway, this thing just automatically points at the balloon. It just compares GPS data that it's collecting locally inside the box and the GPS data coming from the payloads, and it will just stay pointed at the balloon. And the goal here is to run this long enough that the ground infrastructure we have elsewhere can start picking up the balloon. Usually we need about 5 minutes after launch for this to become moot, right? We're going from that 0 feet above ground level up to about 1,500, 2,000, 3,000 feet. But once my satellite station at home or the one at UTD or anybody else that's receiving this can start picking it up, we can tear this down. But we just want to get those first couple packets out of the camera payload while it's going up. We do have a tracking station at UTD. Yep. It's the satellite station that's been on the engineering roof forever. That was one of my first projects in 2013 was to build that out. And it's up there. They've refreshed the antennas. The antennas are all new. The rotator, all new because it had some water issues. And the only thing that's original is the mount and the preamps, but everything else new and working great. And it's It's a rock star for these launches. Mm-hmm. So this is about how large the balloon is before we let go. You know, not that much, but still plenty there. It is hydrogen, so there is a pretty strict no smoking policy around the balloon. A lot of people get concerned with this. They're like, isn't that dangerous? You know, what about the Hindenburg? And it's like, well, there's no significant ESD here. We also didn't paint it with something that amounts to like rocket fuel. So statistically, we're probably poised for more success than the Hindenburg. We're also not flying people under here either, you know, so it's generally okay. You'll see right here that the tank, the hydrogen tank, is sitting on the grass, and we've since improved this process where we've got 50 feet of air hose that we run. So I leave the tank in the back of my truck, then we just run an air hose to where we inflate the balloon, and more than anything else, that saves my back. That's like a 150-pound tank full, 125 pounds empty, something like that, and you only have so many like bear hugs on that thing before you slip a disc or whatever, and I just don't need that negative energy. So let's see. This launch was out of Gainesville back in, what was it, like the 1st of June, somewhere around there. And so, again, nice curvature of the Earth. We were fighting an autofocus issue on this. There's some autofocus trickery we have to do on the Pi Camera V3. And we've got it much better than this, but most of the images came out looking like that, unfortunately. So we had some hydrogen left over. So what do? Fly it again. Fly more. Looking for one image in particular. This one will probably do. So on this flight, this was a surplus 600-gram balloon from some space camp stuff I did at UTD like 12 years ago. I just happened to still have the balloon. We've got one single RS-41, and then we've got the WeNet payload attached to this that's taking pictures. The goal of this flight was to use that hydrogen, you know, still had about a third of the tank left, and to prove some settings on the camera. Well, when we had finished with the tank of hydrogen, when there was 0 left on both the high and low side on the pressure gauges, we didn't have enough lift to get this all off the ground as intended. So when you've got a balloon, a parachute, a tracker, and then a camera with a tracker built in, what do you throw off first? Parachute. Absolutely. We flew this without a parachute. Yep. It then had enough free lift to finish the job.
I thought you were going to drop the tracker.
No. The parachute. Who needs safety? How much does a tank of hydrogen cost? That's actually a really good question. So from air gas, like $180, right? And that's the hydrogen. That's a 1-month rental. You know, I pick it up, return it within 30 days, $180. From Lind or Lindy, $150. Same thing. Now, I was giving a similar talk 6-8 weeks ago to the Denton Club, and afterwards, a guy in the back raised his hand. The guy looks like Sasquatch, and he's like, hey, I've got a thing. I'm like, what you got? So he's like, at a job site several years ago, I picked up 2 nitrogen tanks, 300 cubic feet. Another guy left them behind. Contractor, you know, left, whatever, didn't get paid. You know, the guy just ran off, right, and left these 2 nitrogen tanks. Can you make use of them for your balloon launches? I'm like, I don't know, but we can find out. So drive out to his house, pick them up, and they're tagged with another gas company called Matheson Trigas. All right, call them up, and I'm like, hey, I'd like to set up an account, and I'd like to know how y'all's bottle swap policy works. And they're like, well, if you've got 2 tanks branded with our stuff, bring them in, and we'll swap them out. And then you don't have to pay any rental or lease fees, right? Right now, $70 a tank for a 300 cubic foot tank, right? So this was the week of field day that all this played out. So I drive down there, the place is in Irving, pick up or swap the 2 tanks, get the new ones loaded up. They ride around in the back of the truck for a week, which safety, we don't think too hard about that one. And so I finally, you know, have the energy and time to unload them and move them into the backyard and strap them to the fence. But before I do this, I take the lid off of one, hook up my regulator, and I measure about 100 PSI. I'm expecting 3,000. Like, what happened? So call them up, and I'm like, hey, did y'all grab from your empty pile? They're like, oh, shit, yeah, we did. So come back first thing. We'll hook you up. We'll take care of this. We'll make it right. So I get back, and they're like, so we're going to take these 2 tanks back, and we're going to give you 4. Okay, yeah, say less. And now the 4 were actually only 200 cubic feet instead of the 300 I started with, but that's okay. I came out ahead with 200 more cubic feet of hydrogen, and we're happy with this. There's no issue. And the best part is, I think when I go to trade these empties in, once we have enough flights to actually empty those 4, I think I can trade it back up to the 300s. So I can probably get away with 4 300s out of this whole thing for 0 cost. Right, that's probably $2,500 in hydrogen tanks that we got from a donation effectively. So $70 a tank is the answer to your question, and we've found a way to really streamline that and make it cost effective for the Richardson Club. What would it be if we went with helium? $500 a launch. Yep. Helium is not renewable, and it's very tightly controlled. There's this kind of sketchy outfit called, Discount Helium of Dallas. They're willing to sell to us, again, $500 a pop. And a club at UTD did that. They spent the $500. They wanted to play it safe. They did that. We just don't have funding for that. But yeah, $500. So anyway, the balloon that flew without a parachute. These are the pictures from the edge of space, and I'm going for the last one before burst here. That's always the most impressive. Somewhere in here. Yes. The last one before burst. Autofocus issue. Isn't that nice? So close, but so far. However, the first one after burst looks real nice. It's just a little sideways. But great photo. This was somewhere near Sulphur Springs. We launched out of Pilot Point, northeast Denton County, and it landed near Sulphur Springs. It took everything we had to stay under this balloon. I mean, the speed limits were somewhat, yeah, y'all know the drill. We did obey stop signs, though. Those are non-negotiable. Always come to a complete stop. Storm chasers have learned that one the hard way. You get these beautiful images of the clouds too. I mean, you see this when you fly sometimes, but it's really nice just having hundreds of pictures that look like this. There's just something special about it. Let's see. So let's talk about the landing location. It's always in a tree. Okay, always. The launch, so we had a launch last September, launched out of Aubrey, landed in Salina, right? Not that far from here. It was only maybe 15, 20 minutes from here. But the field it landed in was like several square miles, right? And there's a creek running through this field. Where does it land, right? The creek is surrounded by trees. It lands in a tree 3 feet over the water, right? You've got 3 miles going this way. No trees, no water. 3 miles going that way. No trees, no water. You know where it was? In the tree over the water. This one was not bad. We were able to find the owners of this property. I drove up. I think they were in the pool, rang the doorbell. They toweled up, came out, a little drunk. You know, that's okay. It's whatever. It's Sunday afternoon, and looked like Margaritaville there. They come out, and I'm like, hey, so this is going to sound weird, but I'm Andrew. I launched these altitude weather balloons, and one of them landed kind of in your back 40. You know, here's where our data shows it landed. And the guy kind of squints at it, and he's like, I know exactly where that is. Follow me. He hops in his Gator, and we follow him, and he drives straight to it. And lo and behold, here it was, you know, the WeNet payload on the ground, the Horus tracker partially in a tree, and then the lack of parachute was further up. Didn't need a parachute. No, the tree did a good job of breaking the fall, and it also knocked this open, but that's okay, because we did have good GPS data all the way to the ground. So no need.
Did that cost you a six-pack?
No, they wouldn't take any money. I offered them a $50 bill, and they're like, no, this was fun. And so on every one of our flights, I fly a little tag, and I'll pass this around if I don't get tangled up in it first. There's 2 labels on there, one with my contact info and one with a QR code to the club website. And I peeled off those labels and gave them to the guy and said, hey, we're going to post the images here. Check this out. And here's my email address and phone number if you want to touch base and find out more about what we do. And ultimately, I haven't heard from him, but I'm sure they checked out the website. Now, we talked about a balloon conference in Kansas, something called GPSL, Great Plains Super Launch. And GPSL is a lot of fun. A whole bunch of radio balloonatics, radio nerds like me meet up somewhere, Denver area. This one was in Hutchinson, Kansas. Next year is going to be in Iowa. And we get together, we have a day of conference and then a day of balloon launching. Well, we were supposed to launch at like 8 o'clock in the morning, but a line of storms was coming through. And everybody else was like, let's wait. Me, I come downstairs, I see that line of storms coming, and I'm like, we got to get ahead of this. I need a balloon taking pictures of this. So we had a spare balloon, we had extra hydrogen. So in 15 minutes, from the time I put the truck in park to when we let go of this, we had a balloon in the air. That was a new record. We only flew the WeNet payload and a tracker. And you can see balloon, big parachute, tracker, and WeNet payload. Now, the day before at the conference, we were warned about a nudist colony, right? Nudist trailer park. They're like, by the way, if you land here, avert your eyes. Be prepared to see some things, right? This is a nudist colony. This video here is probably going to be terrible because Zoom, but this is us releasing the balloon. Like I said, it looks great on my laptop. You can kind of get a feel for it. We walk everything out. Tony there is feeding everything up. There's probably about 4 pounds of free lift after everything. So Tony gets it just about up there, and then he hands me the string, and then just let go, and away we go. And then I wave at it, and off it goes. So this is where it landed. This is across the street from the nudist colony. You've got vast fields across Kansas, all this area, all these plains, right? It is the plains, and it lands across the street from the nudist colony. The balloon did get ingested into a hail core, and it popped only at about 30,000 feet. Because it never actually made it out of the storm, all the images were just gray. So the only thing we really gained from this launch was a good story. It was a lot of fun. It wasn't a bad hike in. You can see the parachute up, of course, in a tree, right? It's just inevitable. There's Alice and Michael Willett going to pick it up. And fortunately, it was within reach. Now, there's still like lightning going on. Like it's striking in real time around us while we're picking this up. And Michael's carrying a 30-foot aluminum pole with him, right? Now, here's the deal. If we hadn't have brought the pole, this would have been in the top of the tree. Absolutely. That's just how this works. Bring the pole, it lands in a reasonable manner.
That's a new pole.
This is a new pole. Our launch back in June, the one Gainesville to northwest Collin County, that one got stuck in a tree up at about 40 feet. And with the 30-foot pole, we spent 2 hours negotiating with the tree for our payloads back. We ultimately broke a pole just like this and another pole. The other pole, we learned, does not have stops in between the sections, right? It's telescoping, right? So it didn't have stops, and so we're tugging on the payloads, and then all of a sudden half the pole is in the tree and the other half is not. And so it took 2 hours, an infinite number of chigger bites, no ticks. There were free-roaming hens, right? Free-ranging hens that were taking care of the ticks, but the chigger bites were grade A. Yeah, Doug suffered from that. I only had about 3, but that's because you were getting eaten up. You were the magnet on that one. 20 minutes? Okay. This was our second flight at GPSL. This was a high-altitude attempt. This was a 3,000-gram balloon, probably about a $400 balloon, okay? Tony here, this Tony, has a record of 137,000 feet. I needed 138, okay? I was gonna find it. So with my 90-gram payload, the 3,000-gram balloon, and a tank of hydrogen, I was gonna do that. Let's see here. So we get it inflated, right? This is our scale mechanism. So this is 20 pounds of weight on a scale. oops, I want to step too far. We zero the scale out, and then any lift will show as just negative weight on the scale. And this works very well. The only time this falls apart is when there's wind. The balloon will give you a false reading. The balloon will have some lift with the wind just due to its shape. And so the backup method is to watch the pressure, Boyle's law. So if you start with, like, say, 3,000 PSI, and you want to dump 3,000 PSI in a 300 cubic foot tank, it's a pretty linear transform. So if you want to dump half that tank or get 150 cubic feet out of it, you just want to see 1,500 PSI on the gauge. Simple enough. But usually we like to do the scale, but sometimes we do have to do it based on gauge. Inflating the balloon, things are going well. This is after that storm had passed through, after we had recovered the first one of the day. There's the hydrogen tank. Starting to come together here. Oh man. Slide or two behind. Yep. There we go. We're up to speed now. We're wearing gloves because the oils on your fingers allegedly can compromise the balloon. When you're at 120,000 or 137,000 feet and you want to hit that 138, you go for these little details to give you that extra 0.5%, you know? This is me letting it go here. You can see the balloon isn't even fully inflated. It's not stretched out, but it didn't need to be for the amount of free lift we were going for. There it goes, up and away. So while that one was going up, we started inflating the next one. So the final bit of the story with that balloon, it turned into a floater. It hit 120,000 feet, and it ran out of elasticity. The balloon stopped stretching, stopped going up, and it leveled off and flew that way for like 3 hours. So I did not break the record. I was hoping to, but no, it had other plans. The cool part, though, so this was Hutchinson, Kansas, not far from Wichita. We had stations here in DFW receiving that. The RF footprint is just that large. The radio horizon is that far out that we had stations here receiving it and receiving it well. So, did it travel a long way? It probably went 120 miles-ish. It landed in a nature preserve. We didn't recover that one. We didn't have any interest in it because that tracker falls from the sky twice a day locally, so I don't need to go pick up that one. So we let that one go. I've not received a call from any park ranger or anything saying, hey, we found your stuff, but it is labeled just like the faucet covers y'all are passing around. But about 120 miles as the crow flies. This is balloon number 3 of the day. This one was going to have all the fancy payloads, 360 camera, 2 trackers, WeNet payload, all that. It's going to scroll here, but some other people in the meantime were launching Mylar balloons that are intended to level off at about 50,000 feet, 50,000 feet. And those were the images we kind of blew past there. But anyway, this is Tony verifying the weight on this payload. Going behind Tony here, we've got the parachute, camera, tracker, and further on down the line. Alice is manning the hydrogen tanks. Looks like begrudgingly. So once we got it inflated and more or less off the ground, we did what's called a tethered launch. So we take like a 300-foot piece of paracord, and Alice is holding one end of it with all the slack. We run it through a pulley at the neck of the balloon and then down over here to Sammy, who's holding the loose end. And when we get the green light to launch, Sammy lets go of her end, it feeds through the pulley, and then the balloon gently takes off, in theory. This was another group launching at the same event. They weren't doing a tethered launch. They just did a palms up launch. All of them hold the payloads palms up, and then they just let go of the balloon, and it just shoop, takes them all up. Sammy holding the balloon there, or that tether. Real quick, let me skip ahead quite a ways here. I think the video I'm looking for is, where is it? Don't tell me it's not in here. Okay. Well, I thought I had a video, but I don't. So, we talked about balloons landing in trees. This balloon landed in a tree much quicker than intended. We released the tether, and some friction on the rest of the string burned through the string, and it got up about 50, maybe 100 feet, and then the balloon kept going, and the parachute and all the payloads came back down and landed in a tree, right? In a field with like generally nothing else, we found the tree, of course. So what I did, I traded 2 other radiosondes, 2 RS-41s, to another group launching for one of their spare balloons. And so now we're on our 4th balloon of the day right here. We get this inflated, and there I am holding the balloon. We've got the payload strung out again. And this one does go up without a hitch, right? Makes it to about 45,000 feet, and then it bursts, comes back down, and we recover the payloads. And it came down quick. It looked like the parachute had been fouled. It hadn't. The string broke. This is the one that broke between the trackers and the camera. So I'm there, I've got these mud boots on, or boots on, wading through this field. There's 3 inches of water and about 6 inches of mud under the water. And I almost trip over the payloads, and I start pulling them all up, get everything up, and there's 2 RS-41s and the WeNet payload, and there's no 360 camera, but there is a frayed yellow string. And so for me to get that camera back, a farmer is going to have to find this in the field. He'll find a parachute and the camera attached to it. He's going to have to download the video. He'll have to see my name badge, Google my call sign, and then contact me to say, hey, I've got your camera. It's more likely that one of us in the room will find the SD card in our cornflakes than that whole process happening. So please do keep an eye on your cornflakes for my SD card. I'd really like that video. So here's what Chase Mapper looked like at the event with all the balloons running around. Pretty busy. Some of these that are real close to each other are multiple trackers on the same flight string, but this was what was going on. This is a fun story. Can y'all tell what's going on my rear view camera there? It had rained. We went through a bunch of roads that said signs by roads, and the sign said road closed when wet. We had gone through 3 or 4 of them, maybe slid a little, but got through no problem. Well, number 5 was the one where we actually figured out what the limits are of this. So I did get my truck stuck, did have to get pulled out. This is an FJ winching me out, and then behind the FJ is a GMC Sierra serving as his anchor. So, yeah, this is yep. So anyway, I was chasing another payload. I wanted to see this other payload land, and we were about a mile away from it. And rather than U-turning, I did this, loop around, about a square mile pasture, and you can just see the mud there. And you don't realize how deep it is until you just don't have traction, until you come to a halt, right? And then you open your door and you're like, oh, damn. So, yes. And I mean, they don't have any rock. There's no rock. It's all just dirt. This actually was the video I was looking for earlier of our balloon. So this, I believe, is ours right there. And we don't have audio from this, but believe me when I say that, oh, sorry, my bad. I missed ours launching. But yeah, there it is landing in the tree. Believe me when I say the crowd went, ooh, And so yes, there, I'll play that again. Yeah, there's our balloon there. Let go of the tether. It goes up, right? And then decides, never mind. And you can see the parachute there, the instant regret about our tethered launch, and the tree that soaked it up. Mm-hmm. My muddy boots here on the dash or the front of the truck. Again, you can see that's pretty bad there. Yes, at least I had the boots. The FJ in the rearview mirror, and the anchor truck behind the FJ. If we didn't have the anchor truck, I would have just sucked the FJ in too. I was stuck that bad. And this image here just shows you how deep that was. And again, you don't know, because it was smooth. It looked good going in. There weren't other ruts there. You don't know until you know. So, anyway, the last launch I want to show y'all was just a couple weeks ago. This is RAB6. This is where we got smart about running the air hose to our payloads. So the hydrogen tank is in the back of my truck. The air hose comes over here. Tony designed and 3D printed this fitting that goes in the neck of the balloon, and there's a check valve in it. So we fully attach and fly this whole assembly so we don't have to take the balloon off the fill hose and then attach the string, right? So this 3D printed tube with a valve on the bottom just flies with the whole thing. So we attach the payload string before we even start inflating. So should there be a mishap, should the string from the weights to the rest of this break loose, it'll at least take the payloads with it, you know. But it worked out really well. So there's Alice and Tony getting this all set up.
There's like lots of iterative improvement.
Absolutely. This is really an engineering hobby. I mean, this is the culmination of all sorts of engineering and fun we have. You can see the valve right there. That's just a regular ball valve. And the check valve is in the bottom of that 3D printed part. And we decouple the hose right there. So this little 3-inch part of hose and the rest of that assembly just fly with the balloon. Let's see, let's hit the next image. There's a closer view of that assembly. Couple zip ties here, couple zip ties here, the bottom of the check valve, and then different places to mount the string. We wanted some redundancy on the string, so if any 3D printed part pulled through, we would still have something. And we did end up running the other part of the string here through a zip tie on the balloon. So if the 3D printed parts totally failed, we still had a zip tie holding everything together. There's Alice and Sam attaching payloads to the string. There I am having some midlife crisis, regret with some payload, something that's not functioning right? I'm always running around like a chicken with my head cut off. What brought us to this point? How did I not prepare for whatever issue I'm dealing with? And I don't remember what the issue was here, but inevitably with a half dozen payloads, you're gonna have something that doesn't work. So there's a freak out, and it's a glorious moment when we release everything and it's all working. Another view of the hose and the balloon. And then this is the launch video. This was a palms up launch. We gave up on the tethered launch. And so Joe here feeds out all the way until the first payload, and then we just let go, and away it goes. It was a little cloudy. So the one payload I wanted to mention, it flew on this flight that I really haven't talked about, was a crossband repeater. So this is a Yaesu FT530. Be careful as you pass that around because there's only one zip tie still holding the heatsink on. But that was like a $30 Hamfest find. The radio was produced like early to mid 90s, but it's got a great front end on it. Much better receiver than any Baofeng. Really sensitive, great radio, great audio through the radio. And all you have to do is hold the 6 key when you're turning it on, and it turns into a repeater. So it listens on VHF, 147.435, and it will rebroadcast that on UHF, on 446.0. Now, what we learned was that if we're not telling people that this is happening, they'll try and talk back on 446.0 and not make contact, and understandably get frustrated. So what we're doing on our next launch is trying to have some voice recording that says, hey, here's the uplink, here's how to get in. You know, don't transmit on 446.0, but transmit on 147.435 with the PL tone, and you'll come through the repeater. So that'll be great. Another payload that we fly is this DMR HT. Okay, last thing. The DMR radio listens on one time slot and rebroadcasts what it hears on the second time slot. It's a single frequency repeater. It's like a real-time parrot. So you program your radio for simplex and push to talk, that repeats it, and then people all across the state and really the whole part of the country can hear you. Oklahoma, Kansas, we've had Little Rock check in, Louisiana, and that works very well. We've been alternating between that and the crossband repeater just due to availability, right? Not everybody has a DMR radio, but everybody's got analog. So we've been alternating, but we will be flying the DMR radio again soon. So anyway, that's about all I had planned to talk about. Do we have questions from the group? I know I covered a lot. Yes, in the back. Do we have any problems with static electricity? No. We haven't observed any issues. Both filling the balloon and in flight, we've just never had anything that's been related to static. I do believe that the balloon builds up a charge, and there are some studies that indicate that the balloon may actually burst because of a static discharge. That might be the thing that prompts it to actually pop, but I don't have the instrumentation to verify that. I would like to test that, though. I just don't know how to do so. Other questions? Yes? Do we need clearances from air traffic control? No. As long as we stay out of Class B airspace. And that's why we launch out of like Aubrey, Salina, pretty far north. It's usually 25 miles away from DFW Airport. So as long as we stay out of Class B airspace from surface to 12,000 feet, we're okay. And we can't fly more than 12 pounds. There's some density requirements as well, but that's the exempt class for balloons. So with that in mind, we don't have to do anything with the FAA. Yep.
Now McKinney's going to have a new big airport here, aren't they?
Yeah, McKinney's about to take off with their airport. Yeah, hopefully they don't redraw the Class B airspace to add in the airport out here. That would definitely mess up some of our launch plans, but we'll deal with it as it comes. They're required to make a Class B? Yep. All right. Anything else? Last call? Thank you very much. Yeah. Hope y'all learned something.
We do have some, these are vinyl stickers for sale that our good buddy KB4 ROI, Roy, has graciously had printed for us. They are $2 a piece or $3 for $5. Is that right? Okay. So if you want one of these, come on up here. Okay, yeah. All right, and as we adjourn here in just a minute, please don't forget tips for Spring Creek Barbecue. They do a great job for us and help us out a lot. Okay, remember, if you haven't done it yet, the check-in code is Lima 4. All right, I want to thank everybody. We had a great crowd tonight, great presenter. Thank you, Andrew. All right, so I need a motion to adjourn. All right, KB4ROY and Larry, KI5OEZ. Seconded it. All right. All in favor, or do you want to spend the night? Spend the night. All right. Awesome. All right. Thank you, everybody.